it is men skewed. And, I don't say this as like, diehard feminist. I say it as someone that still sees a lot of bias in the workplace, and very often self-inflicted for women, because we just almost take this bias on ourselves. I grew up with full entitlement. I was asked basically that to get to my next level, I just needed to start being nicer. The usual feedback is given to women. I see also like how women are received differently. It's such a fine line, and because women are just so uncomfortable with that very often, I think it's like really finding what works for you.
Welcome to CEO with Sophie, the podcast for ambitious women navigating corporate life while creating a career and life that truly lights them up. Whether you're climbing the ladder, pivoting, or redefining what success means to you, know this: you're not alone, and you don't have to figure it out by yourself. If you're ready to grow, lead, and thrive, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. I'm Sophie, and this is CEO with me. Hi, Tia. Welcome to the podcast. Absolutely delighted that you can join us today.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here and to have this conversation.
Yes. No, I'm very excited. I know when we originally spoke, there were so many things that resonated with me. So I can't wait to dive into some of that and get really your takeaways. And I think so many people will learn a lot from that. So I suppose let's dive in. Be great to understand a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Yeah, sure. I guess it's funny when people ask us who we are, we say what we do, right?
Yeah.
So we start with that. And yeah, to stay true to that, currently I am working in two capacities. One is my corporate role as innovation president for Dentsu, which is a big communication group,
Yeah.
holding company. I also have like a business on the side, which of course now is kind of taking a little bit like a second stage. So I just keep it running mostly with public speaking and advisory roles. But originally, Unlock Your Block, which is my business, was born around leadership training and coaching, and also side hustle training.
Nice. What made you start that actually? What made you think I want to support others?
So it was actually probably life in corporate and thinking there is something here. I started to get into yoga much more deeply and meditation. So I became a trained, a teacher and on all those. And I did many courses on the subject. And I thought it would be great to bring some of those principles in a
Yeah.
kind of Trojan horse way in the corporate world, even if, not so openly, because lots of the principles that I work with in leadership training and also speaking and
Yeah.
advising are around self-leadership that
Yeah.
come from also the Eastern philosophy.
I think that's amazing. I think definitely talking about kind of yoga and meditation, these are things that I've really got into recently. And I think that they really do help you when you are in a leadership role. And the fact that you can then utilize that skill set and what you've learned and put it into helping people within leadership that might not be doing that. So no, I think that's pretty impressive. Now, what I'd love to understand more about is, I say your day to day as well, your day job, you know, what is it that you do, if you can explain that to someone?
Yes. So I work in a subset, I guess, of marketing. So more on the advertising
Yeah.
side and specifically
Mhm.
media innovation, where it comes to not traditional, your traditional TV spot but much more kind of integrated content, partnerships and solutions.
Yeah.
So anything that is innovation within the marketing and advertising field. My role is global, so it's very much about kind of setting the vision rather than like minute
Yeah.
activations of it, and then making sure that markets are rolling it out in the right way. And then there is a client aspect to my role, so working very closely with clients on their advertising approach, but also there is a product aspect, as in rolling out products internally for our people around the world.
Wow, nice. How did you get into it?
It's a good question. I didn't so although I studied more kind of sociology, psychology in my degree, but then I did go into a that was more kind of around marketing. However, when I was looking for my first job, I was actually searching for a fashion buyer,
Right.
and I was interested in the fashion industry, and I wanted to become a buyer.
Yeah.
And then this media buyer thing came up, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that is about. And then I ended up kind of, applying for a job in what was then called, media buying, and got into a role like that. And then I just basically stayed in the industry
Wow. No,
from there.
that's
So
pretty cool. Yeah. What would you say are like some of the key moments that shaped you to be kind of who you are and where you are today?
I mean, if I go back and now, we talk a bit more about the person rather than what we do, right?
Yeah.
Like the most, I guess, the biggest moment in my life, well, maybe top three, say, was moving to London from Italy. I think that was truly life changing and in many ways. And of course, I'm still here. So it means I really love it. And I kind of found my second home.
Yeah.
It was life changing in many ways, just because of coming from a small village in Italy, which I love and I go back to. I just found like an anonymity and freedom that's very often you don't have when you are, in a small village or a smaller place. So yeah, London still absolutely attracts me for that reason, just the anonymity, the fact that you can be free, and these days we appreciate freedom even more, right? So because you really cannot take it for granted.
Yeah. I definitely agree with, I think moving anywhere, but especially moving to a different country. Like, I've done that recently with the USA.
Mm.
And it's very difficult. It's difficult, but it's also like, I mean, the feeling you get to like accomplish it and be there. And obviously, you've been in the UK now for so many years.
Mm.
you know, it- it's impressive, but it does, I think, take a mindset for you to go, "Do you know what? I'm going to uproot my life and I'm going to go to this country that maybe I visited, but I don't actually know much about." And I
Yeah.
found, especially with the US, is was like, oh great, like we speak the same language, so it's going to be culturally similar. It's not. So you kind of realize, well, yes, okay, there may be some things that are similar, but on the whole, you're changing what you've known for so many years. Did you find it hard when you first moved? Like, obviously you're settled now, but
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if this is like really true in general. I think there's an age element, right? To do that in
um,
your 20s is probably easier because it's just like nothing scares you at that
uh-huh,
age. And so, despite the fact that, I moved not knowing, many people at all here,
yeah,
didn't find it so difficult. I mean, I moved with through a university degree. So,
yeah,
I was then all of a sudden studying in a different language,
mm,
but even then, I don't remember like finding it very challenging or
yeah,
scary. I just went for it. I think it would be very different, like, in your 40s
yeah.
or later. So,
Yeah, yeah. I think when you're younger, you kind of have a bit of a, can I say, free spirit, and you're like, "Oh, we'll see what happens." And then, you as you get older, you have more responsibilities, and things get a little bit scary.
yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, could not envy. I mean, I don't even think I could do it now. I'm glad I did it when I did. Yeah,
Yeah. When did
definitely.
you do it? When did you do it?
3 years ago now. 3 years
Okay.
ago.
All right. So it's
Yeah.
been
So,
yeah, two, three
yeah.
years. Yes.
3 years, and I think it takes a little while to feel settled. I feel like now I'm
Mm.
very much kind of settled and in a good spot, and, yeah, it can take a bit of time, but definitely don't
It
regret it.
does. Yes, I think the patience with that is
Yeah.
so key because, we also relocated to Portugal for a while a few years
Wow.
ago. And but I guess I didn't have that patience in that case.
Yeah.
Like, we were there 2 years. I think to your point, you need a little longer to just feel
Yeah.
settled. And we were like, oh, you know what? I miss London. And I think it's also recognizing when that you left works better for you and going back to that. Because
Yeah.
sometimes we get that like feel like, oh well, now we're committed to moving. So I need to make this work.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we have that mindset, but it's better to cut your losses, right? And to go for what
Yeah.
you know that you truly love.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't think there's anything wrong in, like, changing your mind. I think that's
Mm.
actually quite powerful, like, if you have moved and you go, For example, I want to be in New York. That's my dream. And you get here, and after a year or two, you're like, I don't know if that's for me. And
Mm.
you actually want to go back home or go somewhere else. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it actually is giving you more confidence. If you go and change your mind, like own it, and like understand that those decisions you're making are going to make you a better person. And now you understand even more what you want, and you're leaning towards like what you see as success, and what, like I say, what might have been success like 5 years ago might be different now. And, don't worry about changing your mind or feeling, oh, well, I'm going to go back to the UK. And that's,
Yeah,
well, it's not a bad thing.
absolutely. A failure. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I think everyone says it on this podcast, but failing is a good thing. It helps you figure out what you want, what you can do.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
you learn pretty quick. Something I was like eager to ask you, was there like a moment where you had to really, I suppose, ask for what you wanted? And was that like an uncomfortable situation, or moving countries, obviously, and going to Portugal and then going back? And, there must have been times where you've had to be quite direct around what you wanted.
Yes, and I guess it is interesting because I coach also many women, that have been in that position. When I think about I've always been someone that's asked for what they wanted,
Yeah.
right? Like I made it maybe not as forcefully as I could have done even, but like I always made what I wanted very clear. And to a degree, like, I think I did very well out of that and out of asking. There was one situation specifically where I was very clear about what my next stage was.
Yeah.
And as a woman in the business and in a senior position back then, this was not my current employer, but previously, I was asked basically that, to get to my next level, I just needed to start being nicer, the usual feedback
Yeah.
that is given to women. And it's, to be honest, it was probably the first time that it
Yeah.
happened to me. I guess I got away with not with being more forceful because as Italian, I got away with more. People just put it down to me being
Yeah.
Italian and, not having the British filter or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I got away with it. And then, this time, like, when I was told, well, you need to be nicer, I just, I literally could not comprehend it. And I left very soon after. Like, I just thought, you know what? This business is not for me anymore if that's what I've been asked to do to progress.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that was a time where I had asked, for my next thing. And so that was challenging because then you kind of, still question yourself or like, oh, I ask for too much or
Yeah.
whatever. And I'm really glad that I didn't let that cloud my thinking and I decided that it wasn't the place for me anymore.
But that's good that you stepped away from that and said, "Well, actually, it wasn't the right place for me to be." I think it's very difficult, like you say, because you could overthink it and be like, "Well, am I the problem? Am I the issue?" But yeah, I think that's a good
Yeah.
way of thinking about it. How did you go about doing that though? Because I think it's okay us saying step away and understand that it wasn't the right environment for you. But I think that initial feeling of like, wow, like, am I the issue? Like, how did you move away from that? How did you change your mindset to see it as a different way than it was?
Yeah. I think, I mean, in that moment, I think I went through all the stages of, when I went through anger,
Yeah,
denial, and then it was like, no, so
yeah,
I did go through the stages because, of course, it was a place where I've been for a while and that I truly, loved working at. And to be honest, like, it's sometimes people say you are as good as your boss, right? So it
yeah,
was it was a specific boss and a
yeah,
circumstance, and potentially I almost kind of punished that business by just wanting to walk away, and maybe I could have had more conversations and
yeah,
potentially with more maturity I would have done. I just thought, this is a part of the business that I want to be in, but I can't be anymore because of this kind of, now this relationship is broken. So and I think I just worked through the stages of everything that was happening and then slowly made the decision. I think these days it's harder because the
yeah,
market is so much
okay,
harder, right? So you can't just easily walk away from a place
yeah,
and know that in 2 weeks you're going to get another job or whatever.
Yeah.
So right now people have to think much more carefully about those moves as well and how they react in those situations. And I always say, like, the antidote to that is like really kind of thinking about your relationship mapping inside a business, right? So that you don't just rely on that one person, your boss or whatever, like, but you have a very good network
Yeah.
internally and externally that you can turn to in those situations for advice, for
Yeah.
different opportunities that don't just rely on one person. And yeah, I mean, when the women I've spoken to, like, it was huge also in the tech industry that I speak to lots of women in tech industry. It's really hard because
Yeah.
it's much more kind of at the top, it's much more male dominated.
Yeah.
And regardless of the fact that, men ask for what they want very often in those scenarios and get given the pay rises, and women still question themselves,
Yeah.
am I asking too forcefully? What does too forcefully look like? And how do I, kind of thread carefully around that?
Yeah. And that actually leads quite nicely because I was thinking there around, that balance between advocating for yourself and worrying about how it might come across. Like, how did you navigate that? Or how do you
Yeah.
navigate?
I mean, it's such an interesting, because I see also like how women are received differently. Like, say, even though we say that, this is changed now, but if a man advocates for himself, like, it's
Yeah.
received very differently to a woman doing that.
Yeah.
And it's such a fine line. And because women are just so uncomfortable with that very often.
Yes.
And I think it's like really finding it's a personal way of doing it, right? You need to
Yeah.
find what works for you. For some people is actually shining through the team that they lead. For
Yeah.
some people is being more visible with their personal brand without necessarily openly having to kind of advocate for themselves. I do think that the most important way of advocating for yourselves is tracking everything you achieve during the year, like just keeping a very close eye
Mm.
on everything that you achieve as you go through the year, and then building that in whatever you have, your review or whatever, like in a corporate role. Normally everyone would have that yearly moment, and just being very specific,
Yeah.
because very often we don't, like, we just go there and like we don't want to brag about ourselves, we just get
Yeah.
read whatever it is. But going to something like that with very specific achievements in all areas is the best way to
Yeah.
advocate for yourself in a way that feels measured and also, in tune. And then just finding opportunities at any moment when that feels natural, right?
Yeah.
Like in terms of, and also I think having someone that truly believes in you, right? That can do some of that
Mhm.
job for you. So it's not you just kind of like, bragging about yourself, but
Yeah.
it's someone else doing and helping you do that job.
Yeah.
And I also will say doing that for other people, because
Yes.
first of all, you realize like how important it is, right? That someone else does that for you. But normally there is a reciprocity principle, right? If people
Yeah.
see you doing it so much for them, they will also start doing it for you, and it takes that awkwardness away from you
Yeah.
having to do it for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, completely agree. I'm very much the type of person like say what goes around comes around, but if you support other people, people will support you and vice versa. And I do agree finding a champion within a business is really important. That's something I've heard time and time again. And even for myself, I think it's important. Where I've thrived is where I've had a champion or someone who's like, I know that they've got my back. And I can go to them with anything and ask advice, and they will truly support me and help me with my growth rather than hindering it or just being in that business mindset. Like they actually want to see you grow. So completely agree around that. I suppose as women, we sometimes are a little bit scared though to ask for what we want, and we can find it harder to advocate for ourselves. We can, struggle with saying, hey, I've done a good job here. And there's a fear behind it. Do you think that that fear ever goes away, or do you kind of learn to channel that fear differently?
I think, having a little bit of that fear is healthy, just because I think it makes you think a little deeper about how you want to come across, right? So it's healthy. It does diminish for sure. I think it doesn't mean that it diminishes and goes away and it doesn't come back again. I think it goes through cycles, right? Because if you are in a place for a long time, you're comfortable there, you know people, you get to a place where you feel comfortable. Maybe then a new boss comes in, or maybe you change role and go to a different company, and you go constantly through that wave, then the market is really bad out there. And so that might, kind of give people more fear. So you cannot rely on the external fact making reduce that fear. So the only way to do it is to just kind of work on yourself, right? And I think that's where everything I do really kind of comes back to, like that mental fitness that helps you kind of see through things that are just, moments in time, and the fact that we can face everything, gracefully with time going by and by looking after our inner game. Ultimately, that's the only thing that we really control out of all the other external variables.
Yeah. Talking about mindset, obviously you talk about working on yourself, completely agree. But like for someone, like if they don't know how to work on themselves, what is one thing that they can do that helps with that mindset shift or, just helps with pushing them forward?
Yeah, I think it's important for people to experiment with different things, right? That because some things work for some people, but not from others. For others, I say for me, there's like 4 or 5 things that are really kind of in the game changing. Having a bubble bath could be great, but that's not like going to,
Yeah.
elevate your inner game.
Yeah.
So what I normally put on that list is breathing. Breathing practice is essential. It's the first thing we do when we're born, the last thing we do when we die. And still some of us get it so wrong and don't recognize the power of the breath to calm the nervous system and to control, our nervous system. Meditation sounds very scary to people because we imagine just sitting there for like 20 minutes or whatever it is, and we don't even know where to start. And I always say, like, you can always start from like a 5 minutes breathing meditation and then just do any kind of mindfulness little practices that, you find on YouTube and on all the other apps, right? It doesn't have to be elaborate, but starting from those like really 2 minutes, 5 minutes and building up to that. The other thing that I works for many people and I always recommend trying is journaling. Writing down, getting like your thoughts on paper, it's just like incredible in terms of clarifying. It makes you work through things in a different way. It's almost like you kind of taken it out of your brain and put it on paper, and it feels like, okay, I don't have to carry it anymore because I just kind of written it down. And that process, repeating it day after day, really helps to get clarity and, to feel better and to build that inner game.
Yeah, I've heard about journaling a lot. I've done it myself. It's something that I probably need to start again. But it's like a habit, these things, isn't it? It's like
Yes.
once you start, you just have to keep going and you will actually see the results from them. And then find what works for you. Like you mentioned that already. Breathing, massive believer in breathing. I actually was breathing this morning because 101 things weren't going right. And I was like, right, I just need to so I completely agree with all of those. Look, trial things, see what works for you, but try and keep it up. I mean, just doing it once every so often, you might not get the
No,
results.
exactly. It's the
Yeah,
consistency that brings the
yeah,
outcome.
yeah, exactly. From what you've seen, what actually sets apart the people who make it into these kind of top roles, do you think?
So, and are we talking, so people, if we're talking about women specifically,
Yeah, we can go
or,
through them. Yeah,
yeah. So like, I think, there's many principles around kind of being promoted, who gets top roles. And some people get over promoted. And there's the famous Peter principle, which is like, says that people get promoted to their level of incompetence, right?
yeah,
There's a lot of that that happens. It is men skewed, and I don't say this as like, diehard feminist. I say it as someone that still sees a lot of bias in the workplace, and very often self-inflicted for women because
yeah,
we just almost take this bias on ourselves. For women, in a way, it's counterintuitive. Is I think what has helped me, for instance, is the fact that I almost kind of ignored the bias completely. Like it didn't, I and maybe I was lucky because I didn't grow up being, even though I came from Italy, very traditional, role structure and all that. Like I was never brought up in a way that made me feel that women have a certain role in society and men have a different role. And so I think I grew up with full entitlement to what there is to to get and grasp
Yeah.
out there. So up to a certain point, I never even questioned that I wouldn't get a job because I'm a woman, or I wouldn't be applied. So it is healthy to, as much as it's possible to do it, to just ignore it and
Yeah.
to assume that you just have the same right
Yeah.
as anyone else. I think it gets harder when we start like then adding the filter of everything that we add as a filter, because and also women tend to not apply for roles
Yeah.
when they feel, unless they feel 100% ready. So that's the first thing, right? Like you need to try before, right? Because getting to that top role does require applying. And if we know that men go when they 60% ready versus women when they're 100% ready, there's
Yeah.
already a 40%
Yeah.
gap there, and that 40% gap is quite hard to close, right?
Yeah.
So first of all is actually taking the opportunity when maybe not you're 60% ready, but when you're 80, right?
Yeah.
And going for it, and then trying to put the bias thing in the back mirror to try not to think about it and let it stop you.
I agree. I think I've always been the type of person similar to you. Like, I'm like, I've never really seen like roles necessarily. I've always been like, I can do anything I want to. I can do anything I put my mind to. I think
Mm,
as you kind of progress, you kind of see some of these things. And obviously, I work in a very male dominant environment. I recruit for people in very male dominant environments. So I see everything firsthand. I think when I was younger, I say I never really thought about that person's getting an opportunity because they're
mm,
male or whatever it is. I think it's
mm.
only as I've got older I've seen it. But yeah, I'm still of the mindset and we can do anything. That's not going to change ever. I absolutely love this, and I know that we are, set on time today. But I do have a quick fire round that I really want to do with you
Mm.
because I think it'll be awesome just to, yeah, get your thoughts on these items and yeah,
Sure.
let's I suppose dive in. So the first quick fire is, what's your workplace superpower that people wouldn't guess from your resume or CV?
I think it's this inner game thing that I mentioned.
Yeah.
So that, like, because of the work that I've done, I just let things slide on. So I have this kind of high aspiration,
Yeah.
high intention, and low attachment. So I can let things slide when there's no need to kind of be so attached to a result.
Wow, I need to learn that. So I will call you after this. I think, and I know this is quick fire, but I do think that as women, we tend to have more of an attachment style in the workplace, and that sometimes doesn't work in our favor. So the fact that you've mastered
Totally.
that, yes, I need all your advice. Okay, next one. What's the most unserious thing that's helped you survive and thrive through serious corporate life?
Serious. Oh,
Unserious,
I
yeah,
mean, I'm serious. Like, I think humor for me is huge.
yes,
And will always make a joke about something. And that is like when I present, when I
love
speak
it.
to colleagues, like
Yeah,
the humor, the jokes is like, yeah, for me is essential. And it's funny because a while ago I read that humor, especially as a speaker, right, hurts women, favors men, hurts women, which is a stat that you should look at, should look up. But I never like let that go. I never let it get to me because I think it's just the biggest unfair thing, right? So basically, the study said that it hurts how people perceive you if you're a woman and use humor a lot versus if you're a man and use a lot.
no way. I did not know that. I'm
Mhm.
gonna go look at that after this because I'm
Yeah.
the same. I love a bit of humor. I think maybe, it's definitely a British thing. Everyone tries to crack a joke. But
Yes.
yeah, I do think humor is so important. And if you can have a laugh when you're in the office as well, it helps you get through the day. So yeah,
Yes.
I agree on that one. Okay, final question. What is one piece of advice you'd give your younger self?
To my younger self. I would definitely, the frame that I just told you, high intention, low attachment, to have got onto that much sooner, like maybe 20 years sooner, would have been very helpful.
Yeah. But I know I said that was my last question, but on that, how did you learn that? How did you kind of start detaching yourself?
I think it has to be with through kind of meditation, mental fitness, right? Like
Okay.
really kind of putting a lot of effort on their inner game development.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I've got so much to go away and read up on and learn about now. So completely I kind of agree with everything you said. Really appreciate it. This has been great, especially for me today. I've definitely needed this conversation. So thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. My pleasure.